Hey guys, it's Thursday, 3:46 p.m. on September 5th, 2019, and this is the moment that I personally have been waiting for. The time that I can actually start to measure what we're told by these national hurricane advisories to what instruments happen to be on the ground. A myriad of tools are available to us, whether they are NOAA buoys, they are airports, or personal weather stations. Now that we are this close to American soil, I can finally take my time and wander through the data with you and show you all sorts of interesting observations. Now, you haven't heard from me for the last 24 hours for a very good reason. I have been behind this computer screen very frustrated because although the National Hurricane Center has done its diligence in reporting to us a bulletin or an advisory, as they do every 2 hours during all of these hurricanes, unfortunately, they have been like trying to nail a fish with a Nerf gun. Slippery in how they define and present the data. What do I mean by that? And hang in there with me, guys. This is a woe that you data geeks out there will appreciate. These folks use some very slippery language. They have begun to discuss these storms in terms of what the actual readings, for example, in this one at 8 o'clock in the morning yesterday, they gave us what an automated station in St. Augustine Beach, Florida, was actually reporting of sustained winds at 46 miles an hour. So we're like, yay, we finally have a real reading from a NOAA instrument, right? Well, that's true, but look at how they're describing the maximum sustained winds. They're using a very unscientific word. They're using the word near. Now, when you have the word near, it is defined by who is ever using that word near. Near is an adverb that means almost, or it is a preposition which means close to, or it is an adjective that means almost happening. So it doesn't matter how you're actually using that word. It's relative to whoever is the author of this particular source that is citing the word near. So when we're looking at maximum sustained winds are near 105 miles an hour, who defines near? Well, in this case, it's Forecaster Bevan. Unless Forecaster Bevan tells us specifically where this 105 mile an hour reading comes from, Forecaster Bevan can say, well, I think that 49 miles per hour is more near to 105 miles an hour than the 185 miles an hour of the storm that it was when it was in the Bahamas, right? So near 105 miles an hour makes this entire sentence meaningless. So that's one of the problems that's been very frustrating with this. Another one of the problems that's unique to these storms over the last 3 years is that the 24 hours preceding these storms hitting land, these hurricanes have an uncanny ability to tiptoe around the buoys. In other words, it says here that the hurricane force winds extend outward up to 70 miles, or in many of them, it says that the hurricane winds stretch out 70 or 60 miles is another one. Let's see. I think it was from 8 o'clock. It was 60 miles. Hang in here with me. 70 miles. I have tons of these. I've captured them all. I think they're all 60 to 70 miles. But here's the problem. As I get the location, which is longitude and latitude, and I plot it on the map, for example, the 8 o'clock reading from yesterday told us that the winds extended out only 60 miles. And so the hurricane strength winds only extended out 60 miles. Well, here's the problem. If I measure 60 miles out from that location, there isn't a buoy in sight for me to use. This is a common phenomena that I have found with the 24-hour track of these storms leading up to the few hours before they hit American soil. So I couldn't track Dorian or substantiate hurricane strength winds simply because there wasn't a buoy around anywhere. At 8 o'clock in the morning yesterday, at 11 o'clock in the morning yesterday, at 2 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, I want you to look at this. This storm, you guys, conveniently stayed over 60 and 70 miles away from any buoy it could possibly have come in contact with. It didn't verge over to the right enough or over to the left enough for it to be measured by any of the buoys around. It's all within 60 and 70 miles. Very, very frustrating, except for this morning. Finally, at 5 o'clock in the morning when my dog needed to go out, very thrilled. I could see that we could finally see buoy number 41004 on the horizon. And now, folks, I'm so excited to report to you that we have 4104 as the 11 o'clock location. Not only did this hurricane go close to this buoy, this hurricane and the buoy shared its 11 o'clock location at the exact same longitude and latitude. I can't make this up, but I'm going to show you right now. 11 o'clock in the morning, 32.5, 79.1, and I'm going to take you to this location of this buoy, which is right here. Remember, 32.5, 79.1. Here's that buoy. Location, longitude, and latitude. I don't know if it's here or not. Oh, I might actually have to hit the back button. That's okay. I'll just hit the back button and show you. 41004, 32.5, 79.1. So here's the buoy. Let's see what happened. Now, why am I so excited about this? Why do I clap my hands and get very excited about this? Because basically this is what I'm telling you. Over the last handful of hours, this storm has actually crossed over this buoy, which is beautiful news. Beautiful news, because from 5 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning, what we should see, because this white pin is where the hurricane passed over, that's the buoy, we should see those hurricane strength winds that were reported by, let's see who reported them. It's just the 11 o'clock, okay, so the 8 o'clock forecast by forecaster Bevan. And let's see, is this today? Yes, September 5th at the 11 o'clock, also by forecaster Bevan, perhaps? Yes, so forecaster Bevan told us that these winds are now near 110 miles an hour. They were near 110 miles an hour before they hit buoy number 41004. And according to the 2 o'clock update, they are near 110 miles an hour now that they have passed over buoy number 41004. What does that mean for us, guys? That means that when I click on this buoy right here, if I start the readings from 5 o'clock in the morning, which I will go all the way back to midnight this morning, I should be able to show you, I can go back even to yesterday, from 2 o'clock yesterday. I should be able to show you somewhere on here hurricane strength winds of 110 miles an hour, dropping down to like 1 knot per hour, and then raising back up to 110 miles an hour. If the information that forecaster Bevan is giving us is true. Let's see. Did that happen? Well, here we are, 1 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the morning. These are knots. The wind speeds are 35 knots. And just to remind you guys, if you're not familiar with this, let's see what a hurricane strength would be. That's 74 knots. So we would need to see wind speeds of 64 knots for there even to be a hurricane. But if the hurricane is going to be 110 miles an hour, like forecaster Bevan said, we should see strength winds of 95 knots at this very buoy. Because remember, according to the National Hurricane Center, this hurricane not only passed over, but its dead eye was right over this buoy in the exact same longitude and latitude. So let's continue. September 5th at 3:30 in the morning, the wind speeds are 35. Remember, we are looking for 64. It gets up to 42.7, 46.6, 50. We're getting closer. 54 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Dropping down to 44, then to 36. Dropping down to 15. Here we go, guys. At 11 o'clock in the morning, what do we see? We see the wind speeds drop down to 1.9 knots. That's exactly what we would expect to see if a storm like, let's see, if the storm like this was passing over that buoy, that's exactly what we would expect to see. We would expect to see this storm have no wind right when it passed over that buoy. And that's what we see. That is basically what we see. We see the wind speed drop down to 1.9. as it approaches this buoy. And then as it passes that buoy, because we've had the last couple of hours, we see the wind speeds increase. 5.8, 9.7, 9.7, 7.8, 11.7, 17.5. We're up to 19. We're up to 29. We're up to 44, 52, 44, 52, 60, 64. Folks, we have a hurricane. We have one reading at 2:10 p.m. for 64 knots, and then it starts dropping down again. What does that tell you? That tells you that every single one of the readings prior to the 1.9 reading here at 11 a.m., every single one of those reports that Officer Bevan was saying were near 110 miles an hour were nowhere near 110 miles per hour. They weren't. They were strong winds. You know, the strongest one we see here is 52 knots before, or 56.3 knots. So let's see what happens at 56.3 knots. 56 knots. That's almost 64 miles an hour. That's strong tropical wind, but it is not. It's not a hurricane. In other words, you guys, the way that the National Hurricane Center has been drafting these infomercials here is to couch it within some very deceptive language. They are actually reporting to us the facts when they tell us that there's a gust of wind at the Charleston International Airport at 68 miles per hour. And when they show us the buoy readings that are, let's see if this one has a buoy reading here of, let's see, this buoy 41004 was showing wind speeds sustained at 60 miles an hour, which I think is almost exactly what I showed you, almost. Yeah, 64 miles an hour. So see, they can actually report the information, but this idea of them saying that it's near, it's totally false. Now, I do want to just emphasize that we obviously did see that the storm finally hit hurricane strength. And this is really important. It hit hurricane strength at 2:10 today, right? And it was measured by buoy number 41004. Now, the next set of questions we have to see, and it's obviously reducing in speed now. We'll refresh this in a few minutes. The next question we have to see is what is happening around the land, because now that we are closer to land, and now that the storm is right here on land, we should see some pretty outrageous wind speeds. Now, for the last couple of hours, I have been monitoring these wind speeds, and short of what I was able to find at Fort Johnson, where the wind speeds are 44, 55 miles an hour. Maybe they've reached up to 60 now, I don't know. Or 24 miles an hour, or 26 miles an hour. Most of these wind speeds, almost everywhere else on the coast, are very, very low. So let's take a look at some of the other outrageous information I have been able to find. I will show you, for example, here we are at Murray Seaside Farms. We've got 3 miles an hour, 12 miles an hour. I just showed you this one. Okay, this is an interesting phenomena. I want to go through this whole data set with you. At this particular location, we had an outrageous series of temperature fluctuations that are worth our time to consider. I want to start looking at, because this is right outside of where the storm is hitting, I want to start looking at the temperatures that we got. This is not the same one. Or is it? Hold on a second here. No, this is the one I wanted to take you to look at. Okay, now the temperatures are 93 degrees, but let's look at what the temperatures were earlier today. You can just look at the graph here. The temperatures dropped down to 32 degrees and raised up to 80 and dropped down to 25. I mean, this was absolutely crazy data. So this is the one I want to show you. Okay, at 12 o'clock, this is at midnight, the temperatures were 34 degrees. They dropped down to, this is where everything else around here is in the 70s and 80s. Then they raised, let me see, did they get down to a full freezing? I don't think they did, but they're very, very close. Then they started going up. This is at 1 o'clock in the morning, they're up to 44. Almost 2 o'clock in the morning, they're up to 50 at 2 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, they're up to 70. So they're continually rising. Before the sun rises, okay, so this is from midnight. This is while it's dark, folks. temperatures at 4 o'clock in the morning are 83 degrees, steadily rising, 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 rising. 82 degrees, 81 degrees. Sun is going to start rising pretty soon at 6:30, 83 degrees still. Temperatures go up to 84 degrees at 7:04. Finally, the sun is rising now. We've got 86 degrees, and then almost 86 here at 85.9. And then something strange happens. As the sun rises, what happens to the temperature here, folks? 82, 81, 77, 64, 56, 52, 45, 38. This is with the sun rising, people. 35, 34, 32.6 degrees at 11 a.m. What the heck is going on? What is going on, folks? The dew point dropped to 24.5. Would you look at these temperatures? Then they started rising again. Now I'm going to hit refresh on this page because I'm curious to see what happened to these temperatures. Now I don't recall that the wind speeds were anything of great interest, but here we go. Let's look at the high. Look at this, the temperature fluctuation on this day. The high is 93 degrees and the low is 32 degrees. That's for today alone. Okay, so let's scroll down and see what the most current temperature is down here. It's 92, guys. That's a 60-degree fluctuation in temperature. And the winds are pretty stable. They seem to get pretty high at around 11. They were 20 miles an hour, but for the most part, they seem to be 26 miles an hour at 9, 25 miles an hour. They've been pretty low, though. Nothing outrageous here. Okay, now that's that one. Then there's another one here I want to show you that should be, hold on, my puppy's starting to bug me. Right here, is this a south? No, that's the same one I just showed you. Downtown Charleston. Okay, here's another one. This one, we're going to go to the extended temperature time here. Okay, so from midnight, temperatures were 86 degrees. And then as the night progressed, the temperatures increased. The temperatures increased to 89. Then after 2 o'clock in the morning, they start decreasing. So they're hanging around 84. Now remember, everything around here is about 74 degrees. It's about the average temperature in the area around here. But for some reason, right before sunrises, the temperatures here start increasing. 5:45 a.m., the temperatures are 87. By 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun has not risen yet. 90 degrees, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. Now the sun is up. It's at 94 degrees. And then watch what happens. The temperatures start dropping slightly after the sun comes up. I've never seen anything like this. Now the temperatures are 95 degrees at 11 a.m. They have held steady at that temperature all day. And let's take a look at the wind speeds. The wind speeds here are pretty consistently below 20 miles an hour. I just thought that was just fascinating. So I wanted to point that out. Now we do have some pretty intense wind speeds. Yeah, look at the high was 95 and the low was 81 today. And the wind speeds, the highest wind speed was 32. Let's see, when did I miss that 32 miles an hour here? Maybe that's the most recent one. I didn't see it. No, I don't see the 32. When did 32 mile an hour winds hit this place? Well, let's just see. We'll just do 32. Hang in there. We'll find 32. 32. Oh, that's pressure. That's not wind speed. Although it says it's the highest wind speed. Huh. Well, it's probably right in front of my face, but I'm not going to waste all that time looking for you. So let's just keep going. Okay, James Island, Fort Johnson. This has got some interesting information also. We have our highest wind speed readings that I have found on land so far. We have 66 miles per hour, and this stopped reading at 224. So I'm going to refresh this page here after. Let me just hit this on table. Okay, we have wind speeds of 66 miles per hour and a low of 22. We'll just scroll down here so we can capture this data for whatever purposes we need it at another time. we can see that the wind speed maximums hit, I don't know. Oh, most recently. Here we go. Then I will refresh this page. 64 miles an hour. Let's see, 64 miles an hour. All right. I'm going to refresh this page. Hopefully the data will still be there. Okay, good. It's still there. You never know when you refresh these pages what's going to be left. Okay, then now the wind speeds have dropped. Okay, so if there was an eye of a hurricane here, it has definitely passed. It is now from 63, 64 miles an hour at noon, has dropped down to 44.7 at 4 o'clock. So I think the storm has passed. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to check a couple of more wind speed instruments here because we're all in the same area of South Carolina here. I'll back up in a minute. Yeah, we've got 12 miles per hour at gusts of 12 miles an hour. And 23 miles an hour here at Forest Trail, 16 miles an hour at Oyster Point, Mount Pleasant, 4 miles an hour, Fort Sumter does not have a wind speed instrument. I don't know why I clicked on it. Fort Johnson at James Island, 45 miles an hour. Rivers Point is 7 miles an hour. Okay, let's just go up to check out Myrtle Beach now. That is the last place I think that they said that there might be. Let's see. I think that's how you spell Myrtle Beach. There we go, there we go. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm not sure if this area is going to be impacted or not. The wind speeds are 1 mile an hour. Let's back out and see where the storm is relative to Myrtle Beach. Well, it's kind of holding its position, isn't it, guys? Let's look at it here. Yeah, it looks like the quote-unquote eye is dissipating. But I think that's all relative because the eye is harmless. The eye is just a center where there's really no wind. But it looks to me like what we're measuring is kind of nothing burger, with the exception of that, what was it, where was it? Fort Johnson or whatever? Johnson Island, let me see. Where was that one? Yeah, Fort Johnson, James Island. That's got the highest wind speeds readings of 46. Interesting that reading that I got down here in Charleston, I don't see it now. Oh yeah, there we go, 95 degrees, still very hot in downtown Charleston. Who knows? I mean, that could just be some strange outlier. That could be maybe next to something that's giving it a higher reading than the other places in town. West Side Bose, whatever that is, 3 miles an hour. 75 degrees. So it looks to me like we may still have some stuff to keep our eyes on, depending on what happens with this. But as of right now, I don't know. It's hard to say. We might still have some problems if this thing forces its way north. Well, it's 4 o'clock. I don't think the next reading is going to be until 5 o'clock. So I'll give you guys another update as this progresses. So you guys hang tight and I will keep you posted.